All right, this video is going to cover complex fractions and unit rates. The things we're going to cover specifically are what are complex fractions, how do you simplify complex fractions, and how do you find unit rates with fractions. So we already know how to find unit rates, but now we're going to deal with fractions and mixed numbers in our unit rate. So first, what are complex fractions? A complex fraction is a fraction that contains a fraction. So whenever you have a fraction or a mixed number within a fraction, that is called a complex fraction. And here we can see some examples of complex fractions. This first one here, we have a fraction in the numerator and a fraction in the denominator. You can kind of see what separates the numerator and denominator there. We have 2/3 in the numerator and 6/7 in the denominator. Next one, again, we have fractions in the numerator and the denominator, 1/12 over 2/3. You can also have just a fraction in one part of the fraction. So here there's only a fraction in the denominator, so it's 5 over 7/8. Or we can have just a fraction in the numerator, 1/9 over 10. Or we can even contain mixed numbers in our complex fractions. So as you can see why they're called complex fractions, because they look pretty complex and it's hard to kind of determine what the values of these numbers are because they're pretty complex. So how do you simplify a complex fraction? We don't know the value of 2/3 over 6/7, or it's really hard to kind of imagine that. So we can think of fractions as division. So we can use division to simplify a complex fraction. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to treat this division bar, or this, fraction bar as division. We're going to think of this as 2/3 divided by 6/7. 2/3 divided by 6/7. And that's exactly what we would perform to simplify that. So if you take 2/3 divided by 6/7, you get 7/9. So 2/3 over 6/7 is equal to 7/9, and that is a simplified version of that complex fraction. And now it's no longer a complex fraction, and we can kind of get an idea of what the value of 7/9 is without all the crazy fractions and stuff within the fractions. So again, if we have 1/12 over 2/3, we can think of this as 1/12 divided by 2/3. And that's what we do to simplify that complex fraction. Take 1/12 divided by 2/3, and we've learned how to do that in our last unit. So that is 1/8. So 1/12 over 2/3 is equivalent to 1/8, a much simpler fraction. Here again, 5 over 7/8, we can think of that as 5 divided by 7/8. So we take 5 divided by 7/8, and when you do that, you get 5 and 5/7. So 5 over 7/8 actually has a value of 5 and 5/7. And then 1/9 over 10, we can think of that as 1/9 divided by 10. And when you take 1/9 divided by 10, you get 1/90. So 1/9 over 10 has a value of 1/90. And then lastly, the mixed numbers, 4 and 2/3 divided by 6 and 2/7. That's how we're going to think of that. So we take 4 and 2/3 divided by 6 and 2/7, and you get 49/66 as the simplified version of that complex fraction. So pretty easy to simplify a complex fraction. We're just going to use division to do that. So what happens when we have fractions and mixed numbers when we're trying to find unit rates? Well, again, you can calculate unit rates with fractions the same way we find other unit rates, and that is with division. We're going to divide the numbers to find a unit rate, and again, we're going to let the word tell you how to divide. That's how you find a unit rate. Let the values of the units tell you which direction you should divide the numbers. So here's an example. Luis ran 3.5 miles in 3/4 of an hour. How many miles per hour did Luis run? So again, we're looking for this unit rate, miles per hour. So miles divided by hours is going to tell us miles per hour. I'm letting the words tell me the direction here. So Luis ran 3.5 miles in 3/4 of an hour. So we're taking 3.5 divided by 3/4, and that gives us 4 and 2/3. So that tells me that Luis ran 4 and 2/3 miles per hour. So again, we have fractions and mixed numbers in our unit rates. We can simplify those just the same way we do a complex fraction. So here's a few more examples of finding unit rates when we have fractions and mixed numbers involved. A landscaper covers 22 1/3 square feet of lawn using 1/10 of a pound of fertilizer. How many square feet per pound does the fertilizer cover? So the unit rate we're looking for here is square feet per pound, and I'm going to let the words tell me how to divide. So I'm looking for square feet per pound, and I'm just abbreviating the square feet and the pounds there. So I'm going to take square feet divided by pounds, and the square feet that it covers is 22 1/3. That's right here. And it's 1/10 of a pound So I would take 22 and 1/3 divided by 1/10. And when I do that, I get 223 and 1/3. And the unit rate I was looking for was square feet per pound. And that's my answer. The fertilizer will cover 223 and 1/3 square feet per pound. Next, Janet ran 2.5 miles in 11.5 minutes. What was her pace in miles per or minutes per mile? Sorry, minutes per mile is the unit rate that I'm looking for. So I'm going to let the words set this problem up for me. Minutes divided by miles will tell me minutes per mile. And so it took Janet 11.5 minutes to run 2.5 miles. So I take 11.5 divided by 2.5. And when I do that, I get 4 3/5 minutes per mile. 3 3/4 minutes per mile. That's pretty fast. And that is my unit rate. And lastly, a recipe for punch uses 8.5 liters of soda to make 5 batches. How many liters per batch is this? So we're looking for liters per batch. So I'm going to let the words tell me how to divide. I'm going to take liters divided by batches to tell me liters per batch. And it takes 8.5 liters to make 5 batches. So I take 8.5 divided by 5, and 8.5 divided by 5 is 1 7/10 liters per batch. And there is my unit rate. So finding unit rates the same way we did in our last lesson, but now we've got fractions and mixed numbers that create a complex fraction. And again, simplifying complex fractions, we're going to use division to do that.